I presented on some of our data that we've been collecting around children who are performing resistance training programs, so strength training in children and youth. We're looking at many neuromuscular variables. One, do they grow does their muscle grow in size? Two, if it doesn't, how are they getting stronger? Which was the primary hypothesis was, their muscles are not going to grow a lot, but they're going to get stronger and there must be neural mechanisms involved. So we examined, for the first time in youth, directly examined motor unit activation and did report that motor unit activation increased following resistance training in youth and likely partially explains the increases in strength and absence of hypertrophy like we would see in adults. So that presentation presented data in the literature prior to our project. Our data in that area of research definitely facilitated the next round of research projects. They were curious to the type of training that the kids were doing. So something that was novel for that project also is the training program that the kids performed was linear periodization and very similar to what we do in adults. Most of the research in that area, the training programs were not equivalent to what we do in adults. So this allowed us for the first time to really directly measure changes in strength if it is similar to an adult following resistance training in children, and it is. Isometric and dynamic strength increase to the same extent to what we would see in adults. So there's a lot of questions around children's performing the squats, the deadlifts, which they all did very well. They do it very well because they're flexible. So a lot of the questions centered on just the experience of the children during the strength training. The other presentation was focused on going over the literature that examined the influence of strength training on the motor unit. The motor unit being where the fibers, the connection between the neuron and the fibers fire faster, you're going to be stronger. That's a hypothesis. The hypothesis that's always stated in textbooks is one of the reasons why we increase strength with resistance training is that the motor units fire faster, so the fibers fire faster. So we really dug into to see if we really actually see that in literature, and it's very mixed. So there's a large number of projects that do not actually show that motor unit activation increased. There's a few projects that have shown it. So we went through almost study by study and outlined the differences of the projects, the differences in training programs, differences in measuring motor units, and really wanted to get to the audience the fact that we really don't know the response of the motor unit to resistance training. We really don't know a lot related to how the motor unit in kids will respond and how the motor unit in adults will respond to strength training. And then also, just the strength training is a very broad term. So there's a lot of different types of strength training programs, all the way from yoga to lifting barbells. So that's a lot of it. That makes it very complicated also to know what happens to the motor unit with strength training. The International Society of Electrophysiology and Kinesiology held their conference in Japan. This conference is very directed towards neuromuscular, neuromechanics researchers. I was asked to come over and lead a discussion on motor unit physiology. These are the foremost experts in motor units in the world. They get together every 2 years. It's a very, we nerd out there because we don't get together that often, and we go to various other conferences, but rarely do we at these other conferences do we get together and talk about specific projects that do look at neuromechanics and the motor units. I think something that was very prevalent this summer and something that a lot of us are kind of getting into is imaginary. It's thinking through movements with your brain and then performing the movement and noticing that we can improve our physical performance or our movement patterns just by simply thinking about the pattern. Something that you see a lot of elite athletes likely do is we have the Olympics going on. It's very easy to see that the swimmers prior to the blocks, they're thinking about the movements. They're thinking about the performance. So we can influence neural activation or motor control just by simply thinking about the movement. And that seems to be becoming more prevalent in our field of study and something that we will definitely look forward to in children. to see if they can think about the process and improve their mechanics by simply thinking about the movements.